into this. So I'll intro us up. Hey guys, welcome to the 34th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comics community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics. Whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations, we hit it all. Today, we have the long-awaited return of the Western Warrior, my friend, movie reviewer and commentary expert, Ryan from NerdyBlurbTV. Man, it is a joy to have you back on.
Dude, thank you so much. I was just thinking about this the other day. We've known each other for a while now. Like, you have been one of my longest supporters, which I appreciate. Like, coming up on like freaking 3 years, dude.
It is nuts. So nuts, man. I've been hitting that realization with like you and my pal Comic Boom and Joe from Joe's Geek Show. Like, I've known you guys for like 2-ish to 3 years now, and it is nuts. Like, the thing is, when I talk to Joey, I see like his daughter like growing up, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember when she was just like a thought. You know what I mean? Such a weird metric, man. But yeah, I'm glad we could finally sit down and get a conversation rolling, because these are always a really good time. If you guys aren't already, please make sure you go check out Ryan's channel, NerdyBlurbTV. There's a link in the description below. He provides one of the most unique experiences and commentaries surrounding movies and pop culture that you're going to find out there. You know, I know things are busy, so you've been away for a while, but I'm sure you'll get back to the grind. So if you guys haven't, please make sure you go check him out. Link in the description below. And if you're not subscribed to my channel already, welcome. Click that big bad subscribe button. And while you're here, please click the like button if you enjoyed the topic of conversation and the preceding conversation to come. But obviously, you know, we're in a big frenzy now in terms of pretty much every mode of entertainment with all of this coronavirus shenanigans going on. But it doesn't change the fact that comic book films are by far the highest grossing average films of all time. The current highest grossing film of all time is obviously Avengers Endgame. But you look at the long list, they're bringing in some pretty big money. So, you know, we thought it was a good idea for us to sit down and discuss some comic book stories that would be great for film. I don't know about you, Ryan. I also have a couple picks for television as well.
I do too. When I was going over like preparing for this, I was just thinking that so many of these could be even better series. And you had mentioned a few of them a couple streams ago. And that's kind of where you and I linked up and were like, we should talk about this. You had mentioned that. And so there's going to be some crossover, but that's kind of like the way of the world nowadays is streaming series, and it's just crazy what can be done nowadays. So I think that's welcomed. I think it's cool, but I got some film ones too. I'm excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing about kind of the progression of television, not only in like the technology, but I think the reverence, you know, like we live in a post-Sopranos television era where we can see this really premium storytelling being done, you know, on the small screen, which is really, really incredible. And they can take advantage of the episodic format. And now, you know, we've been pretty adjusted to hour-long television episodes, which gives you a lot of breathing room. And besides the fact that, you know, television now has the available resources to make cinema quality, you know, film, which is, you know, pretty unheard of. And I think it allows for a lot of comic book stories in particular to be excellent and to really prove their ground, because obviously comic books are a periodical medium. So I think it serves it pretty dang well. But before we get into the topic of conversation, I did want to address a couple of the folks who are joining us live in the chat. So we got my bud Comic Boom joining us. What's going on, man? Thanks for popping by. We got Tehillim29 says, good to see you, Dark Knight. Good to see you, man. Thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're not already, make sure you go subscribe to Ryan below. We got my pal Anthony Duhar. He says, hey, y'all, hope you guys are good and safe Cape Crusaders. I'd like to think so. How about you, Ryan?
I'm doing pretty well. We were just talking before the stream actually went live. That's a common thing to ask nowadays because of all the crazy things that have been going on. But we're pretty blessed, I would say. My wife and daughter and I, we're prepared for that kind of stuff. So we're stoked. We're blessed to be still working. We're blessed to be well in health, and yeah. So thanks for asking.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Cheers to all the positivity. I did want to give a quick shout out to Aunt Duhar. I know his birthday was pretty recently. So if you guys would give him some proper birthday celebrations, man, I just want to give a public thank you. And I've had a lot of great dialogue with Aunt Duhar over the last 2 years now of doing YouTube. And actually, when I went to New York to do my interview with Marvel, I sat down with him and we had dinner and drinks. And he was kind enough to do a quick set of sketches for me on my two favorite Marvel characters in accordance with the interview. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, and make sure you guys check him out. And for any of your art commission needs, one of the friendliest guys out there. So happy birthday, man, and thank you so much for the sketch.
Happy birthday, dude.
And then we have JT Gamer. He says the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming up. I don't know if it makes me a bad comic book TV geek, but I've never watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. How about you?
Neither have I. Neither have I. So I'll just save you from any backlash, and we'll both take it.
So yeah, it's not exactly my jam, but I'm really curious. So as we get into the topic of conversations of comic book stories that should be adapted to film to some capacity, I'm curious how you're qualifying your choices before we get into them specifically, and how you're going to justify the stories. Like, do you have kind of not like a rubric, but do you have like a basis for stories and the style of stories that you're going to want to see on screen?
Like differentiating from superhero and like more indie title kind of stuff. Is that what you're asking?
Well, to like any capacity. So it could be the way that they pace the story that you think would cater well to film. It could be the sheer like visual style that you think would look great in cinema. You could make comparisons between, certain series that you think would be better in television format versus film. However you want to differentiate it. But I'm wondering if there were any like particular guidelines for the picks. If you're like, this story for example, it's kind of off the table because it's already being adapted, but I know you read God Country, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, God Country, I think would be a great film because it has this very epic narrative to it that, could be condensed down to a film, so on and so forth, so I'm curious if you might have a justification along those lines for your picks.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind in answering that question is more what would others want to see, because I want to see the comic industry in film outside of the MCU do well. And that means that you need to engage a lot more people, different age groups, and a different style of story, unlike the ones that were some may say is oversaturated. It's not. I know myself that I'm kind of over Marvel right now, and I'm chomping on cool stuff like God Country, like Nailbiter, like just any of those really cool dark kind of stuff, because it seems that dark is what people are very much enjoying right now. But like the thing that I actually wanted to discuss in contrast to this question is, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic in general is because Lock and Key on Netflix just dropped like last month, and everybody went and watched it, and everybody's got their opinions and everything. And I've read the whole run, and that's an interesting show. Its history, at least, because it was supposed to be made forever ago. It was supposed to be a movie, then it was supposed to be a TV series, then it was supposed to be an only like satellite TV series, and then it got halted for so long, and then it finally came out, and I did not like it. I actually don't like the comic books at all. Like, I like the first volume, but like the rest of them I cannot stand. I hated them. And
Really?
yes, I am not a Joe Hill fan at all, apparently, because I've read
Oh.
3 of his works, which is 2 of his novels, and then Lock and Key. Not a fan. So I'm done with Joe Hill. Even though it was really cool to see him in the TV series really, really quick, I just was just not a fan. And we can probably discuss that later down the road. But I was thinking, like, why did they go this route? Because Lock and Key, the comic series, is actually really dark, really disturbing with kids, and Netflix didn't take it that far. In fact, it went way off script and appealed to a younger audience, which I think is cool, but I don't think it worked here. And so I want to see that kind of stuff. I want to see like darker comics, because comics can get pretty dark, dude,
Oh yeah.
as you would know. And I think drawing more people into it is to reach another younger audience, because they'll go for it because they ate up Lock and Key. So I think that's what I want to see. I want to see the comic industry do well by going into the industry more, but I want to see him do it right.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah, no, I think pretty much any idea has the potential to be a good idea, and it's all contingent upon execution. So I haven't seen the Lock and Key Netflix series, but I can tell you that I don't think that the idea of making it more accessible is necessarily a bad thing, because I think under the right creatives, directors, writers, so on and so forth, they could make it work. I feel
Mhm.
like, under the right control, you can make almost anything work. And there's a big asterisk on almost, but it goes to show you that no idea is necessarily a bad idea. So I think that was a really interesting kind of angle to approach that with. And with that being said,
Mhm.
Ryan, I'm curious, what's your first pick for a story that should be adapted?
So I don't know if you said, when you said earlier, that I've read God Country. I haven't read it. I just got it. So I haven't read
Wow.
all of it, but so far I really like it. And I can sit like, the artist did really, really well at me being able to look at this and visualize it really, really well, with a great story so far. And I'm like, this could be a really cool movie or miniseries or something, because it's got elements of fantasy, it's got elements of sci-fi, it's got elements that are heartfelt, which I
Mhm.
think a lot of people, myself included, can really attach themselves to. And even though I haven't read all of it yet, I like what I have read so far, and I think I'd like to see it as well. So that would be really cool to see, because I also think um, in today's climate, I think that would be pretty relevant so far. If anybody's familiar with the story,
Mm.
or at least if I'm familiar with what I've already read, um, it seems pretty relevant. At least I'm connecting to it on a certain level. So I enjoy that. I would like to see more of that, because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. God Country is a fantastic story, and I'll echo Comic Boom in the chat. Country is amazing, and he does bring up a good point. It is already in the works to be adapted to film, and what's really
Really?
really cool is that Donnie Cates is writing the script, which I think is really really interesting. And I think well, I mean, obviously him and Jeff Shaw created it, so they're going to be given executive producer credits, and it makes me wonder. I think it's Legendary Pictures that's picked it up. If I'm wrong and somebody wants to correct me, feel free in the comments. Um, but I'm curious as to how much control they're going to give the artist in terms of like some visual cues, because very clearly they're giving the writer the task of writing the script, which obviously is a huge amount of control for a film, and comic book creators don't often get that when their works are adapted, even if it is independently owned. So it should be really really interesting, and I think Jeff Shaw definitely, you make a very good point at the way he visualizes the world here. And I think that it has a lot of really great potential, not only in the story, the writing, but visually as well. Um, I feel like I should let you go with another one real quick, just because it is already being adapted. Did you have another quick
Cool.
pick?
Yeah. So, and tell me if this one is being adapted to a film too, because I wouldn't say it's similar. I would say the tone of it is similar to God Country,
Hmm.
but Image Comics of I forget the writer, but East of West is
Oh, that's
something
Jonathan Hickman.
Hickman. That's right. East of West is pretty cool. I guess so. You asked the question, what do I like? And I didn't really answer it because, like, I'm so ADHD. I like things that
Sure.
are really thought provoking. God Country
Mm.
is that so far. East of West is definitely that because it's in an um, alternate history where, from the Civil War, what if things like changed? Like, what if well, I don't want to give anything away. It does say it in the first couple pages, but it is pretty interesting for the rest of the story anyway. But it's just what if things were different and a different outcome in an alternative history in America, but what if the apocalypse is going to happen? And I think that is also relevant in today's world, but I just really like the characters. I really think that that's something a TV series could really roll with and do really well. Like HBO pick it up and like totally like make it like this epic western fantasy. I think it would be really awesome.
You think it could be like the next Westworld?
I haven't seen Westworld, but like I know I want to.
Mm.
That is what I'm putting to like that's what I like attach it to. Even though I don't know Westworld other than the Yul Brynner movie, which is
Mm.
cool. You should watch it. It's probably not as good as the show. But yeah, Westworld that could be really cool. I also think that could hurt itself though. That because Westworld is out there, people will just be like, "Oh, that show or that movie that's kind of like Westworld," even though it has nothing to do with Westworld. It's nothing like Westworld. It's just it's like a Western type theme, and it's not even in the future. It's just like an alternative history. It's crazy. It's awesome. If you haven't read that, anyone here watching this, go and read it. If you like stories that are like really detailed in character and emotion. And that's when I was just like, this could be a really cool show.
Yeah, it's one of those books that I've always wanted to get into. I really like Hickman, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I know that at least a week ago, it was I think every volume was on sale on Comixology, and I think a number of them are free for Comixology Unlimited subscribers. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean it's Hickman, so I think the writing's going to be really strong. I think television, just knowing Hickman's style of writing, was a really good pick because he is very much the type that likes to slow burn and build his world out well, and I think TV would cater
Yes.
to that. And
It's a
obviously,
huge world.
yeah, and obviously the budget behind HBO, like big cinematic style television shows, is huge. So I'm sure it could do it justice. And hearing that makes me really want to take the time to jump back into it. Or jump into it for the first time. So maybe that's something I'll have to look into this weekend while I'm, having my comics and quarantine time. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
that was a super rad pick. I like Comic Boom here. The apocalypse is happening right now. Jeez, I'd knock on wood, but I don't want to get up and hit my door. So I'm going to
And that's why the
metaphorically.
apocalypse is happening. We're not willing to get up and knock on wood.
Well, sorry guys, I've damned us all. But yeah, no, I think that was a really well inspired pick. For me, my first pick is a recent Vertigo series, Rip Vertigo. Um,
Ugh.
by a friend of the channel, somebody who I've interviewed on this channel multiple times, and It's American Carnage by Brian Edward Hill. I think it would do so well in a Netflix or an HBO, 9 to 10 episode, limited series. I think that besides the fact that the plot is really intricate and well layered with conspiracy and kind of tangents on civil rights and equality, but also it does a really good job with taking its political motivations and making them feel really unbiased and a lot less sharp. It really explores the gray area that is kind of society and human politics, and it doesn't put things in black and white terms, which I really love. But the characters are really, really interesting. It really, a very, very non-flattering synopsis is you're following a former disgraced FBI agent who is half black, half white, but he is kind of he's very light skinned, so he doesn't look black at all. And he what's the word I'm looking for? Infiltrates a deeply rooted, like racist, very, very right wing extreme hate group. And it's really well layered. I think thematically and in terms of thematically it is so thought provoking, and the writing is super sharp. So yeah, I think American Carnage would be really, really good. And Ryan, if you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. Just by nature of being a Vertigo series, it feels a lot more independent. And yeah, I mean, obviously, and I mean this truly. I've talked a lot about Brian Hill. I think that this is like the tightest story he's ever written. And I think that's pretty high praise because he's a solid writer. And the cool thing is he has experience in television and writing television. So I think it'd be really cool for him to be the showrunner. And I think it would give it a lot of legs to translate to film.
I know about that. I knew you were going to say that one too, because it always seems to come up in these kind of conversations here on this channel, which is great. Because you also, now correct me if I'm wrong, because it would have been a long time ago. You interviewed him, right?
Yeah, twice
on your channel. Yeah, a couple times. That's what I thought. And those of you who are new to this channel, checking it out for the first time, and you're interested in that, go and check those out. Because first off, Trevor here is awesome at what he does, but like it's a great interview. And the guy seems so cool and so like down to earth. And so that's when I was just like, I need to read that stuff. And you always talk about American Carnage, so I picked that up. I can totally see exactly everything you're talking about. It is great. It should be looked at film or television. It's hard to, I mean, anything literature, I feel like you're gonna want to make it into a series because it's just there's so much there. But like it could do well with both, I think. And I think Hill is a great writer, and if he could be a part of that, he probably could be way cool.
Yeah, I think specifically in the book, just talking about structurally the way he builds stakes, is it caters very well to like comic books as a periodical medium. So I think kind of moving it into the realm of like the episodic format, I think that it would pace out the series very well and make it feel really engaging. I think it would definitely have way more life as like a Netflix or HBO like premium style television show, just by nature of that. But yeah, it's a great series, man. It's thought provoking. The story is excellently crafted. The characters are really interesting and complex. It's a great story, and I think seeing it on screen would be really, really excellent. And Comic Boom in the chat also brings up that Brian Hill is writing Batman and the Outsiders, and it is by far one of DC's better titles. I have been saying that it has been the most consistent Batman book that DC's published in its main line for like the last year by far. Like it is very good. If you want a really great character study with a wide cast of characters that don't necessarily always get the highlights they deserve, that book is totally for you. And what's cool is, even though it's Batman and the Outsiders, it avoids the tendency to make it all about Batman. Batman actually almost feels more like a supporting character in the story, and I think it serves it very well. So yeah, great little plug to Batman and the Outsiders. But Ryan, what is your next pick for an adaptation?
So far we've talked about some, and I feel like it's hard not to like say stuff like this, but we picked some that we think would do really well at like big budget TV series, do it justice, that kind of stuff. I want to throw a couple by you, and you can take this however you want. I think they're great, and I think they're really great, actually, great comic books, and I think they could be really great television shows or movies. But knowing the history of Hollywood, they seem to strike out. And if they struck out on any of these ones, I'd be totally cool with it, because I know that there would be a lot of action that would be super sick. And one of them we've talked about before on your channel. You've talked about on your show. I actually have done a video like this like over a year ago with Comic Man Jake, and I brought this one up again. If you want to check it out, go for it.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Probably is a comic run called 100 Bullets.
Yep, that's on my list too.
And like, sure, that would be really cool, like big budget, like HBO, Netflix, dark, blah blah. It could be really cool, just be low budget John Wick style. It'd be awesome. The whole concept of having 100 untraceable bullets for you to be able to get away with murder, essentially. That's like a very watered down synopsis of what's going on there. I think is super cool, and I think it would be even if it was on like CBS, dude, I'd be like, I'm watching that thing, because I just want to see a great one. But since we've talked about that one before, and if I remember right, that is being adapted into some sort of film or television show.
I think it's been optioned like multiple times over the years, but nothing's ever really followed through.
So because of that, I'm going to choose one that is, at least from what I understand, has not been considered. And it's one that I've talked about on my channel before a long time ago, is Lazarus, which is Image Comics title that I don't know how long it is. I don't know the writer, because I also got that wrong in my video that you pointed out. Like, you were so cool about it. I was like, hey, by the way, you got that wrong. I was like, sweet, I'm not changing it. And then I got blasted on the comments. But
did you really?
But yeah, I really did. And I'm fine with that. Like I think some of them are gone because they were just like taken down or something. Okay. But Lazarus is a futuristic post-apocalyptic type storyline where families pretty much run the world, or country at least, and they have like appointed Lazaruses, which are protectors, cyborg protectors. I mean, it sounds really cheesy, campy kind of stuff, but it actually really isn't. Like, it's very, very well written. It's like the action in it in the comic book is really freaking cool, and I think they could make a really awesome like low budget movie from that, and make even like 3 movies out of it.
Huh. That's really cool. I know. I think Lazarus has been optioned, like, and that's the thing. Option, when stuff gets optioned, like it's so pre-production, it's not even funny.
I know.
It's just like, hey, we're interested. Like, let me give you a little bit of money so that nobody else can offer, for X amount of time to produce your thing. I think those are both great picks. I haven't read Lazarus. It's something that I'm ashamed to say that I haven't read yet, because I think Greg Rucka is a talent. I believe the artist is Michael Lark, who is also a titan in the comic book industry. So it's one I definitely want to get into. And 100 Bullets, I mean, I've spoken its praises many times on many streams. I think it just has a lot of longevity. I think you could do it for sure as like a cable television show. The only reason why I don't, and it's entirely selfish, is because I want, and I'm going to use like one of my allotted swears for the stream. I want it to have some really bitchin' cinematography. I want it to have some really, really technically sound cinematography, because I think that that show would just be elevated by a very specific style. I think if you get, and not, I don't want it to be like a copy off, but if you look at like the cinematic style in something like what's it, 1917, you know what I mean? The way that they deal with perspective and things like that, I think would be really interesting, and not necessarily in the way that it kind of gives off the illusion that it's one continuous shot, but just in the nature of it, I think would be really, really cool. And yeah, I think television would be huge. I think it has the legs to have 8, 9, 10 plus seasons. So it's a great pick. But yeah, Lazarus is something I really want to check out. And I'm curious, because you were saying like a lower budget film. What made you decide film over television?
So, in regards to lower budget film, I was thinking 100 Bullets, not Lazarus, even though I bet you could get away with that on a lower budget, because there's not really much to the scope of this. Sounds so like idiotic to say, but the world isn't really big. It actually is huge in the story, but you don't see it. That's like the point of Lazarus, is that you don't, at least not at the beginning, you don't see it for so long. So I think Lazarus could get away with a smaller budget, much like John Wick did, much like Deadpool did, and just make it really appealing to casual moviegoers, but also keep it in the scope of where people appreciate the story. Now, 100 Bullets, it should be awesome cinematography, but the reason why I brought up John Wick with that is John Wick is beautifully shot, especially John Wick 2. And Chad, whatever his last name, I can never say it correctly, the director of John Wick, like nobody really believed in like him being able to throw together a B, pretty much a B class movie. It's kind of like a trope. It's like, oh, a guy's mad, so he takes out the whole mob. But yeah, it was so unique in itself. That's what I feel like could happen with 100 Bullets, is that it is already unique in its story, but then couple that with a great action director that can beautifully direct cinematography. I think that would benefit a lot. Keeping it a low budget could only make it go so much further.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, I'm sorry, I can't remember, for Lazarus, were you thinking TV or movies?
Oh, sorry, yeah. That one was a movie, like a
Yeah,
trilogy.
I think you could definitely do lower budget movie, but I think the thing about the reason I was referring to cinematography and it was mostly in the realm of television, was because if you put something on syndicated television, one of the things that um most television does is that they don't have mobile cameras. They'll set up multiple cameras and they'll cut between each camera to show angles, which I think can get really choppy. Like, you know what I mean? So if my response in terms of like higher budget cinematography was more like if we're going the TV route, because HBO does tend to lean more, like big brand cinema in terms of the way that they're doing the technical side of things. But yeah, I think you could definitely do, a B film, John Wick budget kind of, but you get what I'm saying about cinematography. Like if you watch syndicated television, like something like
Oh yeah.
Arrow or anything like that, it might look
Yes.
cool, but
And I can see what you're saying, but have you ever seen the TV show Hannibal or no? Oh
no.
man. Dude, for some reason I watched it a long time ago and I don't know why it's like all of a sudden been on my mind. But it's like an origin story type of TV series for Hannibal Lecter.
Hmm.
And that was like on primetime TV, and I'm watching that, and I'm like, this is well done. Like, not only is it well written, but it doesn't look like it's on CBS or whatever, NBC. I'm actually trying to look it up, and it's not telling me where it's at. Darn you. Oh, NBC. So it's like, it looks pretty legit. So, and it would have to be, because Hannibal Lecter is a pretty iconic character in both literature and film. And this is the first time they did a TV series. And sadly, it was only 3 seasons long. Not because it did poorly, but because I think it wanted to branch out into streaming because it came out around that time. I can't remember, but it's very awesome. If any of you need to watch something really cool while you're in quarantine, go and check that out. But I think, especially since networks need to compete with platforms such as Netflix, I think they're upping their game for sure. Places like ABC, who Disney owns. So I think stuff like that. But that's like getting a little too off the topic anyway. I just think that 100 Bullets could be done really, really well because there's a lot of action to it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, the picks are both really excellent, and their stories, regardless, that I would want to see up on the screen to some capacity. But for me, my next pick, I think it's time. I've held off doing superhero-y things. I've held off doing big
Cool, because my
bombast.
next one is also one. I'm
Yeah.
excited for this.
But so this movie that I'm thinking, and the story is one of the most acclaimed DC comics of all time. It is pretty large in scope, but it isn't necessarily grandiose. And it's Batman Long Halloween. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
It very much seems like Matt Reeves may be taking some elements from Long Halloween Dark Victory. In particular, if you've read Dark Victory, if you know the covers, all of the covers are colored outlines of characters over a black field. And if you notice the cinematography test, it was a red light of Batman with a black background. So I think, and aside from the like all of the synopsis and all of the messaging we've heard from Matt Reeves regarding the more detective noir tone, but I think that Batman Long Halloween is so large in scale that you would have to do it in a film. I think you would need, some big budget cinematographer to really push it. I think that the current cinematographer, I don't remember his name, but he did Star Wars Rogue One, who is on the Matt Reeves film, would be great. I also think that if you got Lawrence Sher, who did Joker, to do a Long Halloween film because of his particular use of like color palettes and color play, because that's a huge kind of color play has a huge presence throughout Long Halloween into Dark Victory. But I think what's really great is the way that you'd be able to pace Long Halloween throughout a film. I think it would still be 2.5 to 3 hours, which I don't mind. The more Batman, the merrier. But there's just so much to it stylistically in the visuals and in the storytelling. I think that you could really structure a stimulating movie, and one that doesn't feel like 2.5 to 3 hours. I think it would be an easy ride, and I think there are moments that under the right filmmaker could be expedited so that we can make room for the bigger moments in cinema, to really take hold of the medium and really bring out the best parts of Long Halloween. So yeah, I think it would be an awesome, awesome film. And it's Batman, so it doesn't have to be super big budget.
So you took mine. That was definitely on the list. And of course it had to be. I have another superhero one, which is great because we can discuss this, because I think it has to be a film. Long Halloween has to be a film because of how many iconic villains are in that one. I mean, it's like villain after villain all kind of working together in a way, and it's like you can't do that in TV platform because it's been done before, and not everybody was super like cool with that. I don't know like how loyal your subscribers are to the show Gotham, but like I liked it, but I was just like, eh.
It was
And I shouldn't ever feel that way about Batman. And that's what I'm worried about if they were to do like a storyline. I also feel like and I stopped watching it by this time, and I'm glad because I really like the Court of Owls storyline, and they brought it into Gotham somehow, and I was just like, that's cool, but you glanced over it like really, really quick. And there were a few storylines in Gotham that I was just like, I'm familiar with this, and they could have dove into it a lot more. And I'm worried that with comic book hero type shows, I feel like, especially with Batman, there's just so much, and you want to be able to do all of it, but you can't, even in a TV series. So I think that if you stick with one storyline, because like one season could be like Long Halloween, and then which would be fine, but that would never, like, they'd never do that, even though I'd be totally down with that. It has to be done in film because of so many iconic characters. Everything needs to be treated very well. And I'd totally be down. Hopefully we see some elements to that in Matt Reeves' new movie. I can't say that I'm super sold on it yet. And when you dropped your video on it, I was a little bit more excited because you had mentioned this. I was like, if there are long Halloween stuff in it, I'd be so down. So we'll see. We'll see in like 5 years from now or something.
Listen, man, I'm sold and a half on Matt Reeves' Batman movie. Aside from like all of the huge casting news, but that's a conversation for another time. I think we could have another hour-long conversation speculating and whatnot and giving thoughts. But yeah, man, Long Halloween is so weird, right? Because it feels so grand, although the entire story takes place in Gotham, and it's not like, we're gonna fucking bomb the city or whatever. And yet, being such a really tight detective noir driven story, it has that grandiose feel to it, which I think is really great. And I think Jeff Loeb's writing really caters well to the screen. Not to mention, specifically when in my opinion, I think it could only work in film is because of the visual liberties that you can take in cinema versus in television. I think that this movie has to have a very, very particular style to it visually. I'm not saying like crazy exaggerated body parts like Tim Sale, but there are some very definite visual cues that I think need to be present in order to execute the story properly. I think the color palette is big. I think that there's something about the way that Batman feels like a mythological character in the way that he's built, in the way that he lurks in the shadows, that needs to be present somehow, not necessarily in his suit or some weird anatomy, but I think that we still need to get that feel for Batman there. It is really great, and that movie is a paradox in so many ways in tone, but it's so well executed. The story is solid. And yeah, and then like I was saying before, the thing about Batman films are they're so low budget, it's not even fucking funny. And I think Long Halloween is an easy billion-dollar film under the right person. You know what I mean? You could be making Joker made $1 billion. Now you actually put Batman in it, in a good Long Halloween film under the right people. I think it could make upwards of $1.5 billion. So I think the justification for a studio to make it is already there.
Not only, okay, I agree with so many things said. Also, you could throw Joker in that storyline because he's in that storyline. He's not the main part of that storyline, which I think could be the downfall because Batman is such a popular character. We have a lot of casual fans who go in just want to watch a Batman movie. And that storyline, For the most part, is very, very mob driven, and I don't think casual moviegoers want to see Batman take on the mob again
I
and
do.
again. You know what I mean? I
I
know
do.
you're not a casual moviegoer though.
Yeah.
I want to see that. I definitely like Batman Begins is one of my freaking favorite Batman movies ever
Well, I think
because of that kind of stuff.
I really do think though, in terms of Batman in cinema, we are really missing noir Batman. Like we've
I
gotten
agree.
grounded Batman, but even in Batman Begins, like he's a world traveling Batman. It feels a little bit more grand. I want Batman on the streets, and I want Batman doing some really dark detective work. Like this should be. I mean, ultimately, like if we're doing like a totally original idea for a Batman film, I want a really gritty, intense, like crime thriller Batman. Like to the same degree that Logan was a neo western with Wolverine in it, rather than like a Wolverine movie. I would be totally game for an intense crime thriller with Batman in it. Um, as much as I want like a high fidelity comic book Batman universe, I would be fine either or as long as it's well executed. But I think the cool thing about Long Halloween is it's the best of both worlds. It is
Mhm.
very celebratory of the fact that it is comics, and it puts on full display Batman's crazy rogues gallery that could only exist in comics, and yet
Mhm.
it feels very live like, and it feels very you know what I mean? It's spectacular, and I think it.
Well, you and I have talked about this before, but like the world is starting to move into the direction of things that can only be done in comics. When Shazam came out, I think I texted you or something after this. I was just like, I can't believe I saw that on screen when the whole
Yeah.
family becomes
Yep.
Shazammed.
Yep.
Like I legit, and I don't even know why, because it feels right in the movie, and yet when I saw it on screen, I couldn't believe what I saw. I was just like,
Yep.
this only happens in comic books, and that's when I was just like, we have crossed a boundary here. We have broken down walls, and I think stuff that we as comic book readers would never see in another medium again. I think we have now crossed over into that world. So yeah, Long Halloween can happen, and it could totally be amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean that movie earned that moment too, which was really important. It's not like they just threw it in there for the sake of kind of being an homage to I mean, the entire movie was an homage to Jeff Johns' New 52 Shazam. It was
Yeah.
almost beat for beat Jeff Johns Shazam. So, but the important thing is that they really earned that moment, and in to the same degree, and I'm sure at some point in this conversation we'll talk about it more. But like Into the Spider Verse was just a landmark in the way that it adapts the
No,
comic
I
book.
definitely know I texted you because I texted you while I was in the movie theater,
Mhm.
still watching the movie. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this
Yeah,
movie is ridiculous."
yeah, and there's something about the way that it is a comic book on screen. It was a comic book on screen, and they made it work in so many different ways. And I mean, we could. I mean, that was the best movie of 2018, like no cap. So I could sit there and talk
Mhm.
about it for days. But Ryan, I'm curious. I know you were saying you had another superhero pick. What do you got? What do you got on deck?
Okay, so I've got a controversial one, not in
Okay.
the pick, but because of the things that are about to come out of my mouth.
Okay.
Um, so, oh, I need to think of who created it. I think it's Dynamite Comics.
Okay. Interesting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, when I get to it. But James Gunn made a movie last year called Brightburn.
Hmm.
And maybe a little over a year ago, Adam McKay, who is the director of Anchorman, but also director of the Big Short, Vice,
Didn't
awesome director.
didn't he do Step
Uh,
Brothers too?
I think so. Yeah, I think he did. Um, Great director when he takes it seriously. I don't know. Maybe he always takes it seriously. I just like his movies. But Big Short is one of my favorite movies of all time. And when I saw that he was connected to a comic book run that I am familiar with, that I like, that I don't know why we haven't made this yet, got shot down because James Gunn then swooped in with all of his little cronies and bought it out from underneath him and didn't do anything with it, changed everything, and made Brightburn instead. And I'm pissed about that. Now, a lot of people say that I am just a James Gunn hater, and I am. I just really don't like the guy, and I don't like his movies. I really hate his movies. And I think, yeah, I really freaking do. I mean, Guardians is great, and he did a great job with it. But here's the controversial bit. He didn't do any of that. He didn't write it. He didn't do any of the creative stuff. Like, it was totally a different writer who didn't write in the second one. And the second one was far worse than the first one. It was crude. It was way more James Gunn. If you've seen any of his other movies, like movie 2042 or something, and then Super, all really crude. You can tell when James Gunn took over writing. So it's like, you definitely didn't come up with the ideas. Anyway, the comic book run that I really thought would have been freaking way cool as a movie is called Irredeemable, which is what if Superman lost his shiz and just became a villain. I'm pretty sure. I think it's Wade I think it was Mark Wade who wrote that.
Mark Wade.
Who has done Daredevil in the past. And
he's done like everything at the big two.
That's true. But like Daredevil, I think, is one that a lot of people are more familiar with. If I'm familiar with it, then a lot of other people are as well. Because I'm kind of a casual comic book reader. But every now and then I'll surprise people by like Irredeemable because it's not really well known. And the only reason why I started reading it is because of Wade's name. That was it. So I was pretty stoked because I read it, and then I saw that Adam McKay was going to pick it up, and I was like, interesting choice, but I'm glad that it's going to be made into a movie. And then all of a sudden stopped because Brightburn happened, which is basically the same premise, except for the fact that it's a kid who's like evil, but irredeemable, which the movie was actually going to be called The Plutonium, because that's the name of the superhero, which I think is an awful name. He actually started out as a very like virtuous, very courageous type of guy. And throughout the whole run, you're getting these kind of flashbacks. Like, he's doing awful thing. Like, seriously, like, you're thinking like, oh, he's just a brainwashed guy. No, he's not. He really is freaking pissed. And you're starting to pick up on it throughout the whole run. And you're like, oh, I can kind of see where he's coming from now. That's what's really cool about that. And so I thought that would be such a cool thing to see in a movie. There's so many movies out there. If you've seen the movie Memento, that movie is completely built on the fact that you have no idea why this guy is doing what he's doing, because everything is filmed backwards. Like, every scene, like, it doesn't correlate with the scene that came before it. And I think, I'm not saying the movie should be that way, but I think there's stories can be told really well by doing the right flashbacks. And the Plutonium, I think, should be still made into a movie, because I think a lot more people would be down with it, because Brightburn was freaking gory and horrific, and it didn't need any of that. In fact, I feel like that's the only reason why he let his brother make that movie anyway. So crazy. Anyway, the Plutonium, which is actually called Irredeemable by Dynamite Comics, was one that I'm still bitter about.
Huh. I didn't know. I've heard of Irredeemable. I've heard of it multiple times, and obviously I knew enough to know that it was by Mark Wade. But I didn't know that Brightburn was a pull from that. I mean, I think that there were some very clear kind of Superman homages, which, I mean, are present in so many different things. But that's really interesting. I didn't know the background behind that.
There's actually more to that because, and if any of you are familiar with the channel, The Stuff of Legend, Daniel covers this very, very, very well on his channel. But during that time, James Gunn was fired from Disney, and he then picked up this movie, except for the fact that it's been in his pocket for a while now. And on Daniel's channel, he goes into depth why that's kind of like, it was like kind of like his resume for DC. And lo and behold, he gets a job with DC with Suicide Squad. So funny how that happens. But the whole reason why things were changed was because he wanted to feel more like Superman rather than this random super character. And Comic Boom just said this. Incorruptible was one that I was going to mention that could be a really cool spin-off movie because it's also a spin-off of this one. Or is it Unstoppable? I think it's Incorruptible. I think you're right. Anyway, there's a lot that could be done with this, and yet it got stopped because of Brightburn. And not a lot of people know that because, well, first off, it's kind of hearsay, but I just don't like James Gunn so much that I'm willing to like run with it. But it feels like a James Gunn thing for him to do because he's done so many things like that in the past.
Huh, that's really interesting. I don't think I don't think I've ever been aware of your distaste for James Gunn. That's interesting.
I've always wanted to make a video on it, and I just never did.
Dude,
and it's because I'm just so pissed at him. I just don't like the man.
I'm sure it would rack up views, man. Like it's a hot take for sure. It's definitely a hot take. Yeah, oh wow. That's crazy. That sounds really, really cool. And the interesting thing is you brought up how James Gunn wanted to take at least a little bit more visually a Superman cue. Superman is like Mark Waid's all-time favorite character. Like, yeah, he is obsessed with Superman. He knows everything Superman. You read his birthright. You read pretty much anything he does. Like his even like any like really high virtue character he's ever written in comics to some degree is always at least partly inspired by Superman. So I'm not surprised that he made like Incorruptible as a kind of commentary spin-off on Irredeemable. That's interesting. It's something I definitely have to check out. And I guess Comic Boom says that it was published by Boom and not Dynamite. I don't know how long ago was Irredeemable published?
Oh man, I'd look it up, but I feel like better people than I can do that in the chat because I trust them more than myself. But it's been a minute. I wouldn't say it was like right. I wouldn't say it was like right after Birthright, but I'm pretty sure Waid was coming down from that high of Birthright after writing that, which I was going to then go in later. It's like, I would love to see that storyline actually be put into official canon on the big screen. So that'd be nice. But that's I don't know how old it is.
Because I thought Boom was like a really, really young publisher. For some reason, I thought that they were only like 10 years old or something. I know that they're definitely getting a lot more traction now. Which, like, as an honorable mention, the story isn't done yet, but I think like Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion would be an awesome television show. It's really creepy. It's really spooky. I don't want to go too far in depth because it's still going on, and for all I know, it could just tank and be horrible. So I don't want to give it like my pure blessing. But as of right now, it's excellent. But that's a really, really cool and well-inspired pick. I think well, obviously going superhero, it felt really out of the box. So I like that a lot. And the background information was really cool.
Well, see, honestly, that's why I chose it, because the comic itself actually feels out of the box, because it's not your typical superhero type of comic. It's not like the superheroes are going around saving. It's like, oh no, it's the plutonium, our old friend again. It's honestly like the plutonium is Superman. He's indestructible. He can do whatever he wants and nobody can stop him. So it's almost like this is the new world order. Like that's how it feels, and it's really cool. Anyway, sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're good, bro. Okay, so we've gotten confirmation from Comic Boom and Ant Duhar. It was 2009 that it was.
See, I was going to say 2008, so good call.
There we go. Not a bad radar there. my next pick is what inspired the thumbnail for this video. I think Batman Beyond would make such a cool movie. It's been optioned. It was optioned years ago. Actually, I found out that Batman and Robin, before they made Batman and Robin, they were looking into doing Batman Beyond, and they were going to bring back Michael Keaton as an old Batman,
What?
which yeah, that like it was in the works before they did Batman and Robin, which is nuts.
Dude,
yeah, I think
that would do so well right now too.
oh my god, would it do well? And like, yeah, Batman Beyond. And the thing is, like, it has legs. I think you could get 2 to 3 movies out of Batman Beyond. Obviously, the first being an origin story movie for Terry, because I think that there's a lot of us kind of 90s and pre-90s babies that, you know, watched Batman Beyond and enjoyed it. But I think there are a lot of kids that don't. And I think that, you know, I think you have a couple different options with Batman Beyond. One being a live action feature length film, obviously bringing back what's his name? Michael Keaton as an old Bruce Wayne, because I think age-wise he's getting up there. I think he obviously has the acting chops, and just it would be an incredible dynamic. You redo the origin, you introduce Blight, and the really, really cool thing is for even casual Batman fans, you do get cameos and little scenes, you know, with Batman's old rogues gallery that feels redeeming. But I think it'll also introduce a new spectrum of comic book villain. And obviously, like, the technology is there now just to make it look incredibly badass. So I think that would be my number one kind of way to approach it, as like a neo-noir, in the same way Logan was like a neo-western. And on the other end, I think you do a Batman Beyond movie inspired by Into the Spider-Verse. I think you could do a kick-ass premium animated feature-length film that would just look incredible. You could really homage a lot of like the late 90s, early 2000s visual style and animation. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse proved that it works 100%. And obviously its roots originally being in animation, I think a lot of us original fans would just go nuts for it. But I mean, either way, I'd be happy. However, I do think I would prefer the live action with Michael Keaton, just because I think it'll have a little bit more range that way for people to view and experience it. And like you said, I think that there would definitely be a large audience that would go and watch a movie like that.
So I have some questions for you, because when I saw the thumbnail, I was like, ooh, this is going to be good, because duh, it should be a movie already. First question is actually one because I just don't know. Has there been a Batman Beyond animated movie?
Yeah, it wasn't theatrically released. Yeah, they did Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which would be great being adapted to live action. It was an awesome animated movie. I think as a kid, it was like one of my first VHS tapes. And I remember watching that movie over and over and over again as a kid. And the thing is, it's one of those few things from my childhood that truly holds up. And everybody that watches me, Ryan, you know, I'm a critical bastard. So I would unrelentlessly pick it apart if it didn't. And man, does it still hold up. So under the right person. Yeah, but I'm sorry, I cut you off a little bit. Continue.
No, not at all. Because like Into the Spider-Verse, as you can see, Comic Boom also says the same, like echoes your same thoughts. And I had those same thoughts when I saw the thumbnail, but I thought if Sony actually had the rights to Batman, well, first off, we'd be in a whole different world if that was the case. It'd be a totally different multiverse situation. But let's just say that they did, and they made Into the Beyond Batman verse instead of Spider-Verse.
You could just do Batman Into the Beyond.
Hey, that's cool. I like that. I personally think, because Into the Spider-Verse did not do very well at all. Surprisingly, very poorly.
Yeah.
For the caliber of movie it is, the award the awards that it won, multiple awards, by the way.
Yeah, multiple Oscars, not even like, you
Oscars
know,
too.
yeah, it's like it won like the granddaddy of cinema awards.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's crazy to think how bad it did. But if it were Batman and if it was Batman Beyond, I honestly feel like it would have done way better, like
And I
way
and I think
worlds.
not just in like the technical side of Batman of Into the Spider-Verse having existed, Spider-Verse had ridiculous legs after it came out. I think a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people went back, watched it on Netflix, and I remember like the crazy like hysteria of people going to buy that movie on VOD after it came out. And I think that the not like the larger movie audience, but definitely a bigger population of people, a significantly bigger population of people, um, are will not snooze on a movie just because it's animated. And I think that aside from the fact that it's going to be Batman related, and people having missed out on the theatrical experience and knowing that they missed out on the theatrical experience of Into the Spider-Verse after the fact, I think that it gives a little bit more like financial credibility to doing a
Mhm.
Batman beyond like large scale animated film, because I think people are way more prone to going out to watching it and not being kind of subservient to the stigma around animated film. You know what I mean? Because if you look at these big animated films, I mean, Disney has a monopoly. Disney Pixar has a monopoly, and it's because they built their audience over time. So I think
Mhm.
there's something to be said about taking like animation, theatrical cut animation, in a totally different genre. And again, I think Into the Spider-Verse, not only in the way it told its story visually, technically, but just in the response that we had after the fact, I think really paved the way for a Batman Into the Beyond animated movie to succeed.
So I like that. I agree with that for the most part,
Mm,
and that's where a couple of my other questions is. Well, first off, I mean, everybody knows Batman Beyond from the animated TV series. In fact, when it's mentioned that it has a comic series, like a comic run, a lot of people are like, "What? Really?
mhm.
I thought that was just a kid show." No,
And it was really
it's
good.
I mean, yeah. And so it's proven that it can do well in multiple different ways. It's hard for me to picture
Mm,
a live action movie that isn't okay. So like, we're gonna sound a little bit hypocritical here because I agree with you that a lot of people are not gonna skip out on a movie because it's animated because maybe they don't identify with it. They feel like they're too old for it or whatever.
mm,
But for Batman Beyond, because everybody relates that to their childhood, I feel like a lot of people might think that, oh, well, that movie's not going to be gritty or whatever. I'm not going to go see that. Do you play on the age range? Do you appeal it to kids, kind of like how Spider-Man Homecoming appealed,
uh,
or kind of like anything that the MCU kind of does, but more Spider-Man Homecoming appeals to that age group?
mhm. If it's live action, no. No, because its audience
Really?
is my age. Like, the audience for it is my age range of people, and I think just based on the fact that in and of itself, Batman Beyond for a children's television show alongside its predecessor, Batman the Animated Series, pushed the bounds of cartoons and of children's TV. I mean, really, it didn't talk down to its audience. It was
Mhm.
mature. It played with some very adult themes and some very adult symbolism. And I think that being able to give the proper creator the reins to push it and actualize those things in film would make it all the better movie. I mean, like you could get this cool like Blade Runner 2049 meets Batman, you know what I
Cyberpunk.
mean? With what's his name? Oh fuck. I said his name like 20 minutes, 10 minutes ago.
Ronald Reagan.
No,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Batman 1989. Michael Keaton.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, you get
That's
Michael
the
Keaton.
second time you forgot his name.
I know, man. I'm losing my mind. I pulled an all-nighter to try to like reset my sleep schedule so I could sleep tonight after this because I'm horrible. So forgive me. But yeah, I think that it just has the making to be an excellent neo-noir style Batman movie. I know Ant Duhart, brings up kind of some cyberpunk elements. Like
Yeah,
I
that'd
said,
be
the
way
technology is
cool.
there to do it a lot of visual justice. I think it's well inspired. It has legs, and yeah, if you're gonna go live action, I think you 100% go for like a PG-13, rating with maybe like an R-rated cut of the film. I think it would be really,
Wow,
really
see,
cool.
that's so hard. That's so
Yeah,
hard for me to picture. It's really
I
hard for me to picture
I
that.
I could totally do it because I mean, you got to think of how people perceived Batman, like the boomers perceived Batman in the 50s. Like they're going into the 50s into the 60s, that's like primetime Silver Age Adam West Batman. So you got to think how, when Batman 1989 was made, it seemed like an impossibility. And so just as I think you might feel that people aren't going to take it seriously, I think if somebody comes out there and puts out a proper quality film, I think it would get some really big reception and maybe under the right person, some big award buzz. I mean, we're really starting to break the boundaries. I mean, I don't necessarily think it was the first comic book movie to deserve it, but Black Panther got a Best Picture nom. I mean, if you ask me, I think what was it 2017 that Logan came out, it should have won Best Picture. Um, but that's easy.
17?
I think it was 2017.
Wait, it was nominated?
No, it wasn't even
Okay.
nominated for Best Picture. Logan. Black Panther was nominated in 2018 though for Best Picture.
Yeah,
But point being is
hard
I
to
think
forget that one.
yeah, which I don't necessarily think it deserved, but we're starting to see the Academy break down the boundaries of not allowing comic book films to be considered high art cinema in other lights. Obviously Joker was also nominated for Best Picture, and I think it had a real chance to win. So yeah, I think that the a Batman Beyond film, both live action in that kind of grittier neo noir style film, and a Batman Into the Spider Verse inspired animated film, I think they both have legs to succeed, and I would be very happy to see either one of those.
So this is a topic of conversation we can have on a different time, but I'm going to say this now
Mm.
so that I can intrigue you later for a different discussion later. But I honestly think that none of them deserved any of the credit that they got except for Logan. I think Logan is probably the only comic book movie that deserves all the praise. And I'm including Joker in that. I think
Dark Knight,
Joker, yeah, even
really?
over I even have a video on that on my channel. Which one's better? Dark Knight versus friggin' Logan. And
Well,
friggin'
no, I mean,
Logan,
I
dude.
think Logan. I think you could make the argument that Logan's a better film overall. But
Mhm.
I remember, or at least going back in looking at headlines, people were really pissed that The Dark Knight didn't get a nomination for Best Picture that
Yeah,
year.
but people were pissed when Robert Downey Jr. didn't get friggin' nominated for Best Actor
Yeah,
in friggin'
but
Endgame.
I think not even just speaking about general people. I'm talking like well-informed film people. You know what I mean? I think Robert Downey Jr. I think you could have made a claim that he could have gotten a nomination for Best Supporting Actor in Endgame. But it more so as a lifetime achievement kind of deal, kind of like how Gary Oldman got his acting, his award for best lead actor in Darkest Hour, because Darkest Hour really wasn't that great of a film. But Gary Oldman deserved his Oscar way in advance. So I think, it's kind of one of those situations, in my opinion.
Well, see, we're starting to get on really shaky territory right now. Because I'm going to
Listen,
say things that I don't regret, but I'm going to
let's
say things that are going to definitely divulge from what. Yeah, dude.
let's
Like,
hop on a stream and do it.
so I like everybody loves or hates the Academy. There's like freaking no gray area. I just like film, and nobody can tell me what's good or not. I personally feel like Logan, out of any of the comic book movies, and I'm telling you, out of any of them except for Into the Spider-Verse, which honestly I put aside from everything because of how it changed the game in general.
Mhm.
But if I had to choose any of the live action superhero anything, it'd be Logan 10 times over. And I'd probably still wouldn't nominate it for Best Picture.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, look what came out of freaking 2017. 2017 kind of killed it when it came to their nominations. Freaking,
Uh,
what was it? La La Land and Moonlight, which controversial in itself there. So,
let me
I mean,
see.
La La Land freaking way better than Logan, in my opinion.
I don't know, man. I cried
Moonlight,
in Logan.
bro,
I
have you
cried
seen
in
Moonlight?
Logan. No, I've heard really good things about Moonlight though.
And I'm not calling you one of these people, but a lot of those people who got mad, those people that say RDJ deserves that say Dark Knight deserves this, those are the same people who didn't see Moonlight, who didn't see La La Land, who didn't freaking see Parasite, for crying out loud.
Well, Parasite was awesome.
I know you saw that one. So it's like, I don't know. The climate within the comic book pop culture world is pretty hot. It's pretty humid. And I feel like it's because these characters are really important to us. They're characters that we want to see justice. We want to see a Batman character deserve credit in what's known as the greatest award in film, when really, like, whether it deserves it or not, we still can love it. And I honestly, to get back on to the right track here, what we were talking about, I honestly think they could do a great movie with Batman Beyond.
Mm.
But, and I'm not going to say it'll never deserve that, but I also think that just because it makes sense doesn't mean that it's going to be the greatest thing in the world, because I feel like you could easily screw that up, Batman Beyond, in a live action movie.
I agree. I agree 100%.
And when I wanted to ask you all these questions, it was, and you made a good point. People who watched the show, read the comics, are now older. So do you make a show where he himself is also older? Do you pass the torch on, or do you actually pick up for where it started?
I mean, I think just by virtue of making it accessible to a bigger audience, I think you have to pick up where it started, with him being, like, I think it was like 17 or something like that. And I think you could still do a perfectly gritty, mature story with a 17-year-old protagonist, just by virtue of the fact that it takes place in a futuristic Gotham in and of itself. But, um, with that being said, obviously over the films, we can watch him age. And I think that most of us that watch those films are, not significantly, or that watch the show aren't significantly older than
Then 17.
than 17. Like, at most maybe 10 years, and even then it's not like a massive boundary. I mean, for me, what that show came out, I think, in 2000. And I was like a toddler, like growing into a kid, and that's when I was watching it, and it was huge on the reruns, like in 2003, 2002, 2003, which is like when I was old enough to like start remembering things. And so I think, with that being said, I'm only currently 5 years older than Terry McGinnis. So I think that there's still a lot of relatability there. I think you could still pump up the maturity and the internal like grittiness that comes with playing in like the Batman landscape. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And you make a good point. It's easy to fuck it up. But to that same degree, I think it's really easy to fuck up any good concept, because there is going to be a certain standard by which, like, the quality, like a certain bar by which the quality has to either meet or exceed in order for fans to generally be happy, because you can never please all of the fans ever, no matter how good something is.
That's true.
Um,
There's one thing that's definitely true, is that nobody's going to be happy with any of these.
Yeah, absolutely. But regarding your like contestation of Logan and things of that nature, I would love to sit down and have a full-blown conversation about that, because Logan is the only comic book movie to break my top 5 films of all time. I think it's one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. And like, mind you, this isn't even like my bias as a comic book person and into those movies, because when I saw Logan, I never watched the Wolverine. I hadn't watched the Wolverine film. I had only
Neither
seen
did
I had only seen pieces of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like and they were all pretty bad. And the last X-Men film that he was a major part of was Last Stand, which was also really bad. So you would think that I wouldn't have a heck of a lot of attachment. And I feel like within that film alone, me not being attached to that portrayal of Wolverine and still crying at the end makes a very big point as to how good that movie was at making you connect with the character and how well written it was, aside from the fact that James Mangold did a fantastic job directing the film and the cast was incredible. But yeah, no, that's a conversation for a whole nother time, dude. I think that would be a really good stream sometime in the future. But
what is that? How good Logan is, or
no, I mean,
or
like,
Logan versus Joker? Because like,
I mean,
there's no
I
contest.
think it was better than Joker too.
Wait.
I agree, but I also think that Joker has a lot of merit to it, and I think that it did deserve to. I think it at least deserved the nomination and the company of a Best Picture, especially when you look at other films. I don't think there was another film that came out last year that I would take Joker out of the Best Picture category to put in.
I had a lot of ups and downs with 2019, and maybe that's what it can be called. Why Ryan's pissed at like so many things that people like, because Jojo Rabbit, great movie, 3 stars for me. Like, whatever. When it won what it won, I was just like, really? Like, seriously?
I thought it was
Whatever.
definitely a top 10 for the year. It definitely didn't break my 5. I mean, to me, my humble opinion, and I'm not gonna like get too far into a rant about it, because maybe we can sit down and figure out a way to make a topic of discussion. My number 1 film of 2019 was Lighthouse.
Oh yeah, that's right. I think we've talked about this.
Nowhere near an Oscar, a Best Picture, and that says something, because I don't really give a shit about horror movies or like those types of like horror thriller style movies, or like the super like old school, very technical cinematography that it had. But I loved the shit out of that movie, and I walked out of that movie having not a single big complaint. Like, I mean, you could argue that like you could shave a couple of minutes off of the first act, but aside from that, really, like if that's your biggest complaint, that movie's got something going for it. But yeah, I don't want to go too far into it, because I think that's something we could definitely kind of iron out.
No, for sure. I agree. And to leave on that note, because I would imagine we're wrapping things up here.
Yeah, I think I could give one more really brief pick if you have the time.
For me?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Do you have another one as well? Because I know
I do.
I have a couple.
I do, and I have to mention, because it's my favorite comic book run of all time. You've also mentioned, excuse me, you've also already mentioned the writer for it already, and I think it's also something that a lot of people haven't read, and yet I feel like a lot of people have read this writer's stuff before.
Oh, can I guess?
Yes.
Is it Criminal?
No, I thought for sure you're gonna get it, because I talk about it all the time, and yet nobody I know has read it, except I actually think Common Man Jake. I made him read it. But it's The Woods.
Oh my god! Yeah. Okay.
Because I just always talk about it all the freaking time. Like, I love it. I don't know why. Like, almost everything about it sounds stupid. Like it's a bunch of high school kids who get marooned on a whole different planet. In fact, it's actually the entire high school, so it's also the staff. And I think it would be. I don't need it to be a movie or television show. I just want an excuse to talk about this comic. But I think it could do really well with what Netflix was trying to do with Lock and Key. And that is appeal to a younger audience that's episodic, that can divert from the source material because there's a lot to work with there. But it is completely character driven, which is the whole point of the that's what The Woods is all about. Like, you get to know these characters in and out the whole way through this crazy situation that they're put in. And you talk about like post-apocalyptic kind of stuff, like you're stranded on a whole other freaking planet, which sounds so stupid, but it's just really not. Like, it's funny, it's got a lot of great action to it, and it's like, did you ever see the TV series Lost?
No.
Good. It sucks. I hate that show so freaking much. But the reason why I watched every single episode is because you just had to know what happens next. And comics are like, that's like their thing. Like, they need you to read the next issue.
Comics are entirely sold on FOMO, which is fear of missing out. Yeah, that is a huge marketing ploy.
And I'm not going to say that The Woods does it best, but The Woods has that to a T. And I think that's just perfect for a series, for an episodic thing to happen, because so many crazy things happen in comic books. But also, like, even for comic book standards, these things in The Woods, crazy things happen, and yet you're like, oh my gosh, like, of course this is the case, because then you're like 3 more issues down the road and you're like, why didn't I see this before? Or why didn't I think of this? It's just got that really cool element to it. I don't think it could be the best TV series ever, but I do think it's something that if more people read, they'd be like, I want to see stuff like this in film or streaming because of how character driven it is. And we're talking about every label, like the high school label, like the jock, the funny guy, the gay guy, the whatever, like the nerd.
Yeah, the archetypes.
All of that is absolutely, and yet you are with them maturing the whole day. The whole comic is about maturing and being able to live life as yourself, and these kids have to do it on a different planet. It sounds dumb, but like, it is some of my favorite artwork out there. And the colorist is like freaking way on point. Like, I like a lot of vibrant kind of stuff. Does a really great job, and Tinian is a great writer, as you know.
Yeah, Tinian's excellent. That's what I brought. I brought up Something Is Killing the Children. If you're not picking it up, you would definitely like it.
I'm not picking it up, so
you should, man. Last I checked, you were supposed to start a pull list a long time ago. You can just throw that out
I
there.
did, and I just like freaking great thing about my job is that I love it so much, but I don't get to make as much YouTube stuff as I want to. And what Trevor is referring to is, we had a debate, and whoever lost that debate had to do whatever the other guy said, and I had to get a pull list because I'm not the biggest fan of pull lists. For the record, dude, that was a whole year ago. Because it was Detective Comics 1000. Holy cow. Oh my gosh. I have been pulling comics ever since. Been pulling comics. Shazam. Been pulling Die from Image Comics, which is great.
Yeah, I've heard.
I like that. And I pulled the entire run of Section 0 in Image Comics, which is great as well. I liked it. It was fun.
Yeah, you should, when all of this quarantine is over, you should definitely check out Something Is Killing the Children. I think you'd like it a lot.
Why can't I do it now?
I don't know, just in case you wanted the physical copy.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was like, what? Something else happened? Oh my gosh. Okay. You scared me there for a second.
No. Oh, but you got Jason in the chat agreeing with you that The Woods was a dope sci-fi series and it tried. Oh, it's sci-fi tried to make a series. I didn't know that. I'm not surprised.
Really? That makes sense. Sci-fi, that would be a great place for that show, actually. That would
Hmm.
be great. Or like, this sounds really dumb, but MTV, I bet they could do really well. Because MTV did Genre. Did you see that show?
Mm-mm.
Dude, talk about cool cinematography on like such a whatever show. Like it's actually a way, it's like Lord of the Rings style stuff. Because Genre is a novel series that's pretty iconic. Um, but it deals with teen related stuff. And so I feel like it didn't do well because of that. MTV picked it up. So yeah, I could see sci-fi doing really well with The Woods. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be really, really cool. I mean, I haven't read it yet. So there's something. It's really weird. So I did a stream with Comic Boom on comics and quarantine recommended reading, and all of the recommended reading that we had brought up was just like stuff that people could really sink their teeth into and binge and just have a big chunk of story now that the time is available. I don't know what it is lately, but there's been something about me that's just been lately wanting to read like just one concise trade story. We're done. This I don't know. It's been a real hankering, like because you brought up like God Country and Comic Boom and I have been kind of tossing around the idea about doing a stream around God Country, and I'm like, oh, it's time to reread that. So
Yeah.
things like that.
So you're saying like just a one shot or just like a solid run?
Yeah, like just one trade paperback
Yeah.
that
Okay.
is it's a tight story, it's digestible. I've kind of been vibing those lately. But Samoki Dude says, "Can you see my messages?" This is the first one I've seen, bud.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm missing something. I've been pretty on top of the chat all night, and this is the first one I've seen from you, Oki. I'm sorry if we missed
I
any.
was
Feel free.
wondering when you're gonna come in here too, dude.
Yeah, feel free
Heard
to
your name.
reiterate them now, and we'll try to retroactively approach some of them. I'm sorry, man. It could be technical glitches. I know, like now that everybody's online, like the bandwidth is kind of odd and funky. So, yeah, feel free to shoot some there in the chat. But thank you for joining us, man. I'm glad that you're here. Um, yeah, no, the Woods is a really cool rec, and on that, like it sounds like it's something that I'll probably dip my toes into soon because I've been wanting like a good digestible story to pick up on, and that definitely sounds like that along with Lazarus. I think it's about time. So that's awesome.
For
I
sure,
mean
check out
there
Lazarus.
are so yeah, yeah, absolutely. I will. I'm a big fan of Greg Rucka and Michael Lark for sure. Um, I mean, I have a bunch of different picks, and I mean, we could make a multi-part series with this same topic. But the last one, I'm just gonna go big balls to the fucking walls instead of cool, tight knit character stories. I'm gonna say we do the first volume to Robert Venditti's Hawkman. I think it's time. I think we're ready for it. I think it's big. It's balls to the walls. It is so comic booky. It is massively grand, and it is a great way to introduce a character that was formerly very convoluted and hard for new readers to approach in a way that pays respect to his history, but also consolidating it and allowing access points for new readers. Because I had a very tangential knowledge of Hawkman prior to that series. I knew, just by being a comic book fan, um, knew the basics. But man, the first arc is nuts. Hawkman re-exploring his reincarnation cycle, and it provides a really, really cool mythos behind Hawkman as a Deathbringer and his and the kind of reasoning behind his I think I already kind of said it. I'm going to be redundant here. Behind his like reincarnation, and it gives his motive an entirely new light. And besides the fact that like the climax is a big battle with like Hawkmen throughout space and time fighting these big crazy like other winged people and massive Gundam Hawk robot things, like I mean, it's a great story. It's well told, has a lot of action. I think not only would it be a great popcorn flick, I think it would be a really engaging movie just based on the themes of identity and the and redefinition of oneself. I think it has a lot going for it. And I know Tim Board over on Hawk World has been yelling out for a Hawkman movie for ever and a half. And I think that this particular volume of Hawkman would play really well to cinema.
So I've heard many great things about Venditti's Hawkman. From you, from Comic Man Jake, from Trinity over at Second Street Marvel. Think Joey too. I'm not sure. Everyone, like all the Avengers, are like telling me I need to read it. Still haven't read it. I know nothing about Hawkman other than he's kind of a dick to Hawk Girl in the TV animated series. That's about all I know. And
Totally.
so you couldn't be suggesting a better thing for me to read, but as he, or at least Hawk Girl, who they're kind of like tag team partners, right? I wouldn't be too far
the
off.
dynamics definitely been changed in current continuity, but yeah, they're definitely well associated and they have a large spanning history.
But Hawkman is he's like a pretty big DC character, right? I mean, like
he's kind of like a B-list DC character, and I'm not saying this like to denote his quality. I'm talking just in terms of like people's awareness and knowledge of him.
Right. Not the Trinity,
Yeah,
but
he's not the Trinity. He's not Green Lantern, Flash.
Right.
But
Iron Man wasn't Iron Man.
Yeah, Iron Man was a C-list character before. You could argue B-list post like Mark Miller's Civil War, but Iron Man was a B to C-list character before Robert Downey Jr. took the reins. And it's funny, just quick tangent. People, I hate the I hate the normies and the casual comic book fans that were like, "Oh, Robert Downey Jr. was the most faithful Iron Man." Wrong. Robert Downey Jr. was better than comic book Iron Man, and comic books changed comic book Tony Stark to reflect Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. So let's just get that.
That's what I've kind of always been under the impression of, and I've never read an Iron Man comic book. So,
dude, you ask somebody for Iron Man reading recommendations, you're gonna get like the same like 3 recommendations,
like,
all the time, So, and that's really all there is. But yeah, no, Hawkman is. The thing is that this run in particular has really shed a lot of light on the character because with the nature of like him reincarnating throughout space and time and all of these things, he was very much considered a hard character to follow. And in terms of pretty widely received runs, there aren't a lot to Hawkman. Like I think Jeff Johns gets a lot of praise. And then he was well featured in Jeff Johns' JSA. But even then, in the modern context, I don't see a lot of runs that are getting a lot of that highlight. And even now, Venditti's running or like penning a great series, and it still, sells not superbly well, which is unfortunate. But yeah, he's not. I would say he is a marquee character to DC in the sense that he is important, and he is kind of one of the big founding figures of the DC universe, but not in the sense of his popularity and him maintaining kind of a larger appeal to the masses. So, yeah.
This is how I see it. I see Moon Knight being somebody who would not do well at running the MCU like Iron Man has done.
Oh, yeah.
But could Hawkman be that kind of person without Batman in the picture when Warner Brothers ever decides to, whatever they're doing, reboot the DC characters? Do you think Hawkman could be the next type of Iron Man that ushers in DC films?
I think it's tough because of the circumstances. when Marvel Studios decided to start that cinematic universe, I think you could argue that none of the Avengers were A-list Marvel characters at the time.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
Avengers was a B team of characters who really couldn't sell books. So they turned Captain America, Iron Man. You could argue that Thor was A-list prior, I think, but a majority of those characters, even Hulk, weren't super high selling. I mean, Marvel's bread and butter at the time in terms of like comic book sales and iconicity was like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and
yeah.
Spider-Man. None of which
Everything that they didn't
Marvel,
own.
yeah, none of which Marvel had the rights to. So I think that because of that, it allowed those characters to thrive and develop a higher standard of iconicism. Whereas like you go around the world and like the Batman logo and the Superman logo are
Yeah,
probably like the two most recognizable symbols in pop culture, regardless of people's favor of the Marvel films. And so I don't necessarily think so just because of that. And we're also in a world, where I think Wonder Woman is getting a lot more love, which is well deserved. And Hawkman definitely deserves the love and appreciation. But I don't think that he would have the legs to make the same cinematic impact that RDJ as Iron Man did. But I think that there's something to be said for the potential of Hawkman to still be an iconic work of cinema, not only in like the versatility of the type of stories you could tell, but also in the sense that like we never dreamed that Aquaman would make $1 billion and Aquaman made $1 billion. So
yeah.
I certainly think it's possible for it to do well. So there's definite legs to it for sure, but no, not to the same like gigantic standard that we could put RDJ's Iron Man on.
Because this is kind of my thoughts on the thing, and like I'm not gonna close out on your own stream here, but like I'll stop talking after this. How about that? With Green Lantern, because all I know about that is that Ryan Reynolds made a sucky movie, and they're now going to make a TV series.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth. Like
It's freaking weird
like
because also I heard that J.J. Abrams was supposed to be doing it, but now I hear he's doing Justice League Dark.
yeah, there was a thing
I don't know.
about them doing an HBO series when HBO Max hit the ground. But also like Jeff Johns has been writing a Green Lantern film script for like 3 years. So I have no idea. Maybe they'll do like a Green Lantern core television show that's kind of like the Gotham Central, so to speak, of space cops.
Right.
And then maybe they'll do like Hal, John, Guy,
That'd be kind of cool.
the heavy hitters in film. Who knows? But continue.
The reason why I bring it up is because I would think that Green Lantern could be that person. Could be the kind of like, I mean, and we're talking about, because in my personal opinion, if I was running whatever they're doing over there in the film industry of DC and Warner Brothers, is I would not make any more Batman or Superman or even Wonder Woman movies that have them teaming up anymore. I'm not saying stop making their movies. Like, go ahead and make a Superman movie that we've all been asking for. But what I'm saying is that if you want anyone to be teamed up, they should be B-list characters to run, and then finally maybe at like a crescendo, Batman walks in or whatever. I always thought that Green Lantern would be the case, but because his first movie sucked so much, I don't think a lot of people would be on board with it. So like I've been trying to think of who could be next. And if Hawkman isn't it, I don't know who could possibly be it. But then again, we don't know what the freak is going on. And you're right, Green Lantern does have tons of potential, but we don't know what's going on, which is probably a good thing. We don't really need to know. I definitely
Yeah.
don't need to know everything because I sit there and think about it way too much, and then I ruin the movie for myself when I actually go and see it. So I don't know. I'm just really curious if Hawkman could ever be in a Justice League movie.
I think he could be. Yeah, I think he could definitely be in a Justice League movie. And Mark Waid's Justice League Year One actually explores a founding of the Justice League without the Trinity. Like the Justice League is founded by I think it's Green Arrow, Black Canary, Flash, Martian Manhunter. I don't know if I said Green Lantern already. But yeah, and like that story exists, so there's like a predication for it. And yeah, I mean Green Lantern, Anthony brings up a good point. Green Lantern has so much potential. I
He
mean, Jeff
really does.
Johns really hit the ground running. And I think it was actually Jeff Johns that took him from being a B-list character into making him an A-list character. I mean, Green Lantern was a kind of long, not necessarily forgotten because Kyle Rayner Green Lantern has his audience, but wasn't it wasn't huge. And I think that it's not even I think Jeff Johns has proven with his Green Lantern run not only in sales but in the nature of how evergreen his story was that you could do so much with the mythos. And like, I'd want a Hal Jordan Green Lantern movie, but you could do Kyle, you could do John, you could do Guy. I mean, there's so much out there for you to be able to do. And I think Green Lantern could certainly be, the big movie to tie it all together. I mean, that's what they tried to do. I mean, that Green Lantern film with Ryan Reynolds, the
That is
original
true.
intention was to be the impetus and the seeds for the DC cinematic universe, and then it flopped, and then we got Man of Steel, which kind of did marginally better. But yeah, I mean, I think Green Lantern definitely has a little bit more of a chance than Hawkman because I think that people are at least exposed to that intellectual property a little bit more. And I think just by the nature of how broad and big you can get with the Green Lanterns versus like, just by the notion of the fact that you're dealing with space, you're dealing with you could do a cop style movie. It could be fantastical science fiction with all of the different cores and the emotional spectrums, all of this insanity wrapped into one crazy bundle. So I would definitely kind of coming around to my long-winded answer to your question. I think Green Lantern definitely has a little bit more of a potential than Hawkman to kind of be that figure for the DC universe if we're, gonna start a DC cinematic universe where, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman are not the founders. Yeah, I think Green Lantern has definitely has more potential. And man, before he gets too old, can we please just fucking cast Tom Cruise as Hal Jordan, please?
Well, I heard he was really going to be in it.
Yeah, there were rumors going around, and listen, I'd want it, and the only reason I wouldn't want it is because I would sheerly as a Mission Impossible geek, I would want him to be the Flash just because he would look so good running because he has the best run in all of movies, and as Green Lantern, he wouldn't be doing any running, and then I can't be deprived of that. But yeah, I think he'd be a great Hal. But yeah, I
Dude,
mean, we're bordering on almost 2 hours here, and it was a great conversation. And I think, given the wide breadth of the topic, I feel like if we wanted, we could go for double the time. But alas, we are churning into the wee hours of the night. So I did want to thank everybody who joined us live for watching. I'm glad you all hit us up in the comments, and for those of you that maybe had issues with us receiving some of your live chats, I apologize. Hopefully that's not an issue in the future. But I want to thank Ryan, man. I'm really glad we finally got to piece out a collaboration. It's been so freaking long,
it really has.
and it did not disappoint, man. This was a great time. So thanks
Yeah.
for taking the time, bro.
It's funny because I feel like the movies that we mention or the comics that we mention are all comics that have been mentioned before that a lot of people want to see. So hopefully this is the stream to end all streams, and that friggin' execs are watching, are listening, because I know you got nothing better to do right now, right at this time. You got nothing to do. You are sitting in your boxers drinking apple juice watching this. So go write up a script for 100 bullets, and for the woods don't care. Make it happen.
It's funny.
But
I'll have to send it to you. I was taking a literature and other disciplines class, and my final project, I adapted a teleplay for the first episode of 100 Bullets television show, and I wrote the whole script for the first episode. I'll have to send it to you.
That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be super dope. But yeah, if you guys aren't already, please make sure you subscribe to my channel down below and click the link in the description to go check out Ryan. Whenever he returns, you know it's going to be one of epic proportions. So make sure you guys stick around, keep waiting with bated breath, as I am for Ryan's return. But yeah, this was an awesome conversation. If you guys are watching this post live, please let me know down in the comments below what your favorite picks were. Did you have any disagreements with either one of us? Are there some things that we didn't get to mention? Because I'm sure there are plenty of options. I know my short list had like 12 different projects just in case. So there's so much out there. But at the end of the day, Ryan, is there anything that you would like to say to the lovely viewers out there on the interwebs?
I do want to say that this is freaking always awesome. I think the last time that you and I did a video was kind of after Captain Marvel. So it has been a long time because we talked about is it important to be true to source material when it comes to the movies. So go check that out only to support Trevor and what he's doing over there, because I don't really care about what you think about my channel, because I'm going to do whatever I freaking want. But if you felt so inclined to go and support us, we appreciate it. We are taking a break right now only because we are going to be doing something freaking dope. But I can only do dope things because dope people like Trevor here exist. So I appreciate you bringing me on. And even though the last time I came on here, I can't even remember, but definitely have done a few. It has been long overdue, and that's been my doing because you have been asking me to come on here. So I really am glad that I found the time to do it. I appreciate you, man. You have supported me for a freaking long time. So appreciate you bringing me on.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. One of my favorite things about discussing things with you in particular is that we never 100% really agree on anything. And I absolutely love that as a component in the conversation, because we can have those interesting conversations and side tangents where you wrongfully accuse Logan of not being a Best Picture nominated quality film. But we can have that conversation, and it's interesting and it's stimulating, man. So thanks for being you, and thanks for taking the time out of your crazy, hectic, busy schedule to sit down and talk some non-moving pictures becoming moving pictures.
Yes, let's get them moving. Appreciate it.
So again, thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you to Ryan for hopping on. If you haven't already, please make sure to like this video, subscribe down below to both of our channels, click that big, bad, sexy subscribe button. And with everything out of the way, this is going to be Dark Knight Nation and Ryan from NerdyBlurbTV signing out.